Hi, again, my name is Bob Gorgoglione, and I thought in between segments of Towards Socialist America, I might give you share with you how my interest in government and economics and history began. And of course, when I was a little kid in the grade schools, I had a natural liking for history, and especially American history. And as I got older, by the time I was 18 years old in high school, it was January 1962, and the previous year we had incidents with the Soviet Union concerning the Berlin Wall, the Bay of Pigs failure in Cuba, the Belgian Congo situation where the communists were taking over the Congo, and a province of Katanga broke away, and the communists were trying to destroy that, and they eventually did with the help of the United Nations and the Soviet Union and the United States. And so I became very concerned about communism. So I went to the school library, January of 1962, and picked up two books by J. Edgar Hoover, What You Should Know About Communism and Masters of Deceit. And I just started reading from then on. I've been reading and studying ever since. 1964, I read a book called Dare Call It Treason. And it was a book that showed the, how can I put it, how the United States beginning about World War I started moving towards socialism, and how the communists were gaining power in Russia, the Russian Revolution, then into the 90s, excuse me, the growing socialism and communist infiltration in our government during the New Deal, and all the way to the 50s with the McCarthy hearings. And by the way, McCarthy has now been vindicated just by what we're seeing around us, that the communists have gained a tremendous amount of power. Our foreign policy has been such, according to this book and many others I've read since then, that with the support of the United States foreign aid and assistance, technological assistance, industrial assistance to the Soviet Union, we have helped to turn the Soviet Union into a great military power, economic power, and we've done the same thing with China. Till today, we now have Russia and China, and it seems particularly China right now, are the industrial centers of the world. Since we've adopted all kinds of government controls and regulations, environmental controls, heavy taxes, it has forced American industry to either go out of business or move to foreign countries. Most of them have gone to China. And because of that, we no longer have an industrial base. We no longer really produce any wealth. It's become more of a service economy. Russia and China, in this case China, has become the industrial center of the world. And we now depend upon China to borrow, to loan us $1 trillion to keep our economy going. But now we see that the Chinese are beginning to pull out. Also, I might add, in studying over the years, I've come to see, beginning with Cuba in 1959, when Fidel Castro took over. Then in 1979, the communists took over in Nicaragua. And since then, the communists have taken over virtually every country in Central and South America. And one of the ways they've done that is they've had military, economic, and political agreements with Russia and China, the South American, Central American countries. And the danger that we face, while we have all of our troops over the Middle East, all our heavy equipment, our air forces, Navy forces, the whole bit, are mostly in the Middle East. While in South America, the communists are taking more and more control of the South American, Central American countries, and they're being built up to a great military power, particularly Brazil, Venezuela. How can I put it? That rather than have all our troops and all our attention over in the Middle East, we should be concerned about what's happening south of our border. It is amazing that what really bothered me back in 1961, when Fidel Castro took over in 59, but in 1961 he finally announced that he was a communist all along, that they're creating a communist state, and that the revolution has now begun. And if only Kennedy, when he had the, instead of having a economic blockade or military blockade of Cuba, what he should have done is he should have invoked the Monroe Doctrine and forced the communists out of Cuba by invading the island, which could have been done very easily, like it was done in Grenada at that time. Instead, he allowed the Russians to stay there, because it was a Russian base, and actually it still is, And because we did not get rid of the communists in Cuba, and we did not prevent the communists from taking over in Nicaragua, and then after that Panama, and all what has happened in South America would not have happened, and the Western Hemisphere would still be secure and safe. It's a lot of this sounds very fantastic, but if you want to look these things up, just take some of the things I'm saying, do a search on the internet, and you will find that information. You'll find that what I'm saying is true. All you have to do is look around you. China and Russia are now the great economic and military power in the world. We're declining very rapidly. When you don't have a military base or infrastructure, I should say industrial base, then you cannot have a strong military. During World War II, we produced 80% of the wealth of the world. By the time the war ended, we still produced 80%. The reason we won the war is because we were the industrial center of the world, 80% of the wealth of the world. So that we didn't win World War II because our troops and our equipment were necessarily better. It was because our industrial might was so great that we could build ships and tanks and planes much, much faster than our enemies could destroy them. That's how we won the war. And if we want to get back to being free, and it may be too late, but we've got to deregulate the economy, get rid of all the regulatory agencies, get rid of the EPA, get rid of the Homeland Security, get rid of the Department of Energy, get rid of the FCC, get rid of all of this. And by doing that, there would be enough, there would be more than enough revenue coming in that we could eliminate the income tax. That would free up the economy, would have economic prosperity, and greater purchasing power, and a growing middle class. It's actually quite simple. If you have less government, you have lower taxes, less regulation, that means you have more productivity because you have more freedom. And the purchasing power of the American people can increase. Back in the years between 1875 and 1895, the standard of living actually more than doubled. I should say the purchasing power of the American people more than doubled in that 20-year period. And the reason why is because there were no government regulation to speak of. There was no income tax. There was no inheritance tax. There was no EPA. So people were free to accumulate capital, invest it, and build and create and invent. And we became the industrial giant, industrial center of the world. We can do that again if it's not too late by getting rid of all of these regulatory agencies. As a matter of fact, Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution lists the areas in which Congress can legislate. There are 17 clauses, and they list the areas in which Congress, the House and the Senate can legislate. And so, if you look into Article 1, Section 8, take a look at it, and see if you can find foreign aid, Department of Energy, aid to education, building dams, interstate highways. It's not there. As entitlements, Social Security. So if we would get the federal government to work within the framework of the Constitution and only do those things that are specifically allowed and delegated to it, then the federal government would probably be, I would say, 80% smaller than it is now. All of those taxes and all that purchasing power would be ours again, and we could once again become the industrial center of the world. You know, when you have less government, you have greater incentive, people are free, they become creative, and that's how our nation became the greatest, most powerful nation in the world, because at one time we were free. Thank you.